right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related to leading yourself and also leading other people. I have a great guest on today. His name is Jeremy Laynor, and he's the Senior Vice President of Global Sales at Providence Medical Technology. He is based in Dallas, Fort Worth area, raising a basketball team, family of 4 kids, and keeping himself busy. And what an interesting story he has, and I'm excited to talk to him about it. But Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. Really excited to be here.
You got it. I am as well. I'm excited to talk to you. And I know we chatted a few weeks ago and had a great conversation. So I've been looking forward to this. So there's so many things I love to just get into with you. And, you've got such an influential role right now, and we're going to get into that. But I want to take it back. I want to take it back to what you were sharing a little bit about. Your initial start in your career was a totally different career, totally different field, right? It was acting. So I'd love to hear this, because my hidden passion has always been to get into acting. I never did anything about it. You're a guy that did something about it. So tell us what that was like.
Well, so just to clarify, when I came out of school, I had a sports management, business administration degree. I moved down to Tampa, Florida, and I took an internship with a Major League Soccer team at the time. It had just started. It was the Tampa Bay Mutiny. Now Major League Soccer is a pretty big deal, but back then it was grassroots, and there was just a few teams in the country. And so I was an intern. They offered me a role in ticket sales. So I'm out peddling soccer tickets, season tickets, group tickets to the greater Tampa Bay area, competing with Major League Baseball and NFL football and hockey. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. I was making below minimum wage based on the hours I was putting in, somewhere between 80 and 100 hours a week, I would imagine. But it was an awesome experience. But I had been introduced through a family member to somebody that was doing some acting and some commercial modeling. And I was really interested in it. And when I think back as a kid, I used to love going to plays at the school. I was never in them because I was in all these sports and just never joined drama or anything of that nature, but it was always of interest to me. So I started asking some questions, and she said, hey, there's an acting class locally. Here's the name and number. Go contact the teacher. So, after work, I would go to an acting class. And I did that off and on for about 2.5 years, and really started to learn the craft. And probably more importantly, was learning a lot about who I was, learning about meditation and a whole different world I hadn't really explored before. And it was really cool. And, inevitably, I ended up getting an agent. I was doing a lot of print work, so modeling, quote unquote, but also doing a lot of commercials, local industrial stuff. And, it was a really, really neat experience for, I would say, the greater part of 5 or 6 years in my early 20s, getting to kind of see that side of the world. All the while I'm doing my day job. I'm working in Major League Soccer. Eventually I went on to another sports marketing firm, and then ended up in healthcare. But all along the way, I had this backdrop of doing a little bit of acting and modeling, which was kind of a neat adventure for me. And by the way, not without a ton of rejection, because number one, I wasn't well trained in acting. I didn't know what I was doing. I took a class and learned a little bit about it. So for every one yes, I got at least 25, 30, 50 no's.
That's pretty cool, though. At that young age. So how old were you at that time? You were in your early 20s? 21 through 25, 26. Yeah. Okay. So you're basically doing what I think every kid dreams of. Like, okay, you watch a movie, you're like, okay, I want to get into acting. You did something with it. So you took classes. Did the classes teach you a lot? Like, did you actually learn a lot about did it teach you stuff other than just acting, or was it like good life lessons there?
No, absolutely. Like I said, I was doing a lot of self-reflection, meditation, breathing exercises. How do you ground yourself to get ready to perform and take on whatever role you're going to take on? So it was a pretty transformative experience, in that I had no exposure to that prior. It wasn't a world I lived in. I was in a very competitive, sports environment and school, trying to get the best grades I could get, and then trying to get the best job I could get. And, this was just taking a very different approach to everything. And, back now, it definitely provided me, a unique space and a foundation to work off of that has applied to other things I've done, down the road. And, I don't talk about it a whole lot. My wife was, who I met probably kind of towards the latter portion of the acting and modeling time, but she's always been somebody that's been able to ground me and say, hey, whether you're doing a Adidas commercial or on a big billboard on the side of a bus or whatever it is, you're still somebody that should be very humble in their approach to life. And she's been there. We've been married almost 20 years now, 19 years this year. So she's kind of been the rock to keep me very grounded whenever I felt like I was getting a little too big for my
You never let your head get too big.
Never.
So what was the biggest gig that you end up getting?
Well, I would say I was in a low budget film, really small part. I was probably in a couple other little films, but I did a pretty big national commercial for Applebee's that ran for a while that a lot of people saw around the country. Did a Bud Light ad. I did a lot of commercials that, you may or may not have seen, at that time, but
cool.
Those are probably the more well-known, but I really liked some of the jobs, you get to travel to other places and whether it was a print job or an industrial, which is you're just doing kind of a film or an industrial spot for a company that's going to use it within their own, confines, not for the public consumption. A lot of those are really interesting, jobs to do.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of them. I remember, watching, hours and hours of training videos and stuff. You realize those actors are hired actors, and
that's right.
Make a living doing that. That's pretty cool. So did you, was it something that, so you did it for how long? How many years were you in that?
5-6 years, maybe 7, as what happens is, as you got to make a decision at some point. Okay, what do I want to do with my career? Am I going to be pursuing this? And then you have to move. I was in Tampa, Florida. That's not a market you can really make a living full time. And some people could do it, but I couldn't. Yeah. You have to make a decision. Do you want to go to New York City? Do you want to go to LA? Do you want to go to a major market where you can really pursue, that? And I was all along the way was really building my, my selling skills, my leadership skills, and thinking about what do I want to do in the future. And when I got into healthcare, my first job with Cardinal Health, that's when it really became a challenge to balance the opportunities with my career. And I just said, you know what, where I was at was I think we either were pregnant or pretty close. It was like, all right, I got to make a decision here. Yeah. And, and I'm glad I went the direction I did, to say the least. So that was kind of the slow teetering out of those jobs and really focusing on my career and building.
That's good. Well, I'm sure it prepped you in a lot of ways. One of which I'm sure it helped you build a real thick skin. I mean, in that industry, they're telling you not only no, but they're probably telling you every reason why they're saying no. And it's not the nicest comments, right?
Yeah, you're to this, you're to that. You don't look right. You name it. It's very cold, and you're right. It was a perfect grounds to work from for sales. Because when you go out in sales, it's the same thing. If you're building a region or a territory or a business, and you're dealing with customers and competitors, you get told no a ton. So that resilience is really important. How do you get up the next day motivated when you just got your butt handed to you all week long? And now it's Friday. You're like, you got to close the deal. You got to do something. How do you stay in the game? And yeah, John, I think it's a great point. I actually didn't really think much about that, but that rejection over and over and over probably did serve very well for the transition into outside sales.
Yeah. And you work it out, you figure out the numbers, how many times you need to get no and a rejection, you get a yes, and you start to equate it with one step closer to a yes. So
yeah.
Now, was Cardinal Health, was that your first was that your first step into leadership, or was that a sales role? What was that?
Yeah, actually, both. So, I had done the professional sports for a couple of years, Major League Soccer. Then I had a little stint in sports marketing, which was kind of interesting. It was through, again, a friend in the network who said, hey, there's a sports marketing firm. They're doing this national golf tournament for Playboy magazine. And they actually got my at that time was my girlfriend, was working there, and she said, you should check this out. We need somebody to sell advertising and sponsorships around the tournament. So I was like, wow, Playboy magazine, this is kind of interesting. So, long story short, for about a year and a half, 2 years, we built a national golf tournament. It was for amateur golfers. It was a scramble. We went all around the country doing local tournaments, all in in partnership with Playboy. And these tournament winners, then we would fly them out to Los Angeles. They would participate in a championship, round it was on like Fox Sports Net at the time. And then everybody would go to the Playboy Mansion for a party. So you can imagine all the participants were very eager to win their local tournament to get invited to the national championship. And for me on the sales side, being able to use the most powerful men's brand at the time. I mean, you're talking, this is, 1999, 2000, 2001. I'm selling advertising spots in the magazine as well as sponsorships. And it was a great experience. But, we did that for about a year and a half. We're going out to Los Angeles, and it was a really exciting time, but also had its drawbacks, and again, it was kind of a learning experience. What I thought was going to be this really exciting, neat thing was I was getting underpaid, underappreciated, working my tail off, and the environment, although it was Playboy and really exciting, really wasn't something that I felt like was adding a lot of value to others, other than a little bit of entertainment for the participants. And I just felt like there's probably more I could contribute in another industry, and it was fine. I was, again, really young, and thankfully was working with my, eventual wife, and, we got engaged during that time frame, and then eventually, married not far after. But that led me to the next thing, which was like, all right, what do I want to do that I could contribute using some of the skills that I'm developing, this ability to sell and build relationships and drive value to organizations. And, healthcare seemed to be kind of a natural fit. And I had been hearing about it, but didn't really know much about pharma, didn't know about medical device. Started to learn a little bit more about it, and was very fortunate to get an opportunity to interview with Cardinal, and landed a role in one of their divisions.
Wow. So I want to get into that, but I need to go back for the sake of our listeners that want to know, what is a party at the Playboy Mansion like? What's that like?
Yeah, it's everything you think about in terms of the glitz and the glamour. And, what's really neat is they've got this big game room house, like a separate little house that's just gaming, and there's a big trampoline, and they have a zoo there with exotic animals, and the grotto that everybody's heard about. And it's a really neat place. It's very exclusive. You don't even know where it is unless somebody brings you there. You have to park on UCLA's campus. Then they bring you up in a shuttle bus. Security opens these big gates that are covered in, you would never recognize where it is from the road. You go up this long driveway to a circular path, and there's this beautiful mansion sitting there. So it's really cool. You don't go in the mansion. You're on the grounds of the mansion, but we weren't allowed to go in the house. The party was all outside, and, and special tents, and but you're on the ground. So
did you meet Hugh Hefner?
I saw him twice, never met him.
Yeah. Wow.
He wasn't very interested in meeting our group.
Yeah, well, he's probably got a lot of people wanting to get some time with him. Wow, what a cool story. So then you get to Cardinal Health. At what point did you know that you wanted to? And first of all, one of the things you said, which I think is absolutely key, and I think a lot of people get through this realization, you were living a life that was giving you a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction, but you didn't necessarily feel like you were impacting others or contributing. Was that the trigger? Was that the kind of the main impetus for making that move, that shift?
Yeah, I don't know if it was at the time. I was aware that, this wasn't the career trajectory I wanted, and that became very apparent. And then it was, over the course of really starting to explore what can I do with some of the skills I have in healthcare? There's this huge industry that I just didn't know anything about. You just don't know what you don't know. And I was able to gain some knowledge and information from friends and family members. I had an uncle that was an anesthesiologist. I had some friends that were already in medical device sales and pharmaceuticals. And, they kind of started to inform me, hey, there's a whole industry here that needs people like you that can bring valuable information to healthcare providers, whether that's biologics, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, medical technology, diagnostics, you name it. But there's this huge, and by the way, you can make pretty good money doing it. So why don't you check it out? And then I was like, wow, okay, I could be part of this. And if I go back to college, when I first enrolled, I was actually in a pre-med, pre-physical therapy track. I'd always been interested in sciences, and I had a love for science and actually thought about physical therapy or medicine as a career. But playing college basketball and some other things, I didn't have the discipline for that at that time to put the work in and the focus to get that done. And this was now a chance to kind of get back to something I think I truly had a passion for and could really help others. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning. That was kind of the pathway.
And when you were in it, what were the first couple of years like? I mean, were you off to a great start? Was it what you expected? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So within Cardinal, Cardinal's a huge company. And for those who don't know, I think at the time it was probably Fortune 15, 16 company, major healthcare industry provider that does a ton of different things. My division was pharmaceutical technologies. And we were actually building pharmaceutical sales forces and biotech sales forces for companies that had technologies that didn't have commercial teams. So we would build like a custom sales force to launch a drug or a product. And then the company would kind of measure our success rate. And then if they said, hey, this is really working out, they would purchase the sales team. So it's kind of it was like contract sales, but it was a different spin on that. And I happened to get into a women's health division that was launching medication for women going through menopause. And then I got into birth control, and we launched a product called Seasonal, which was a breakthrough birth control medication. And it was really interesting for me. It kind of put me back into the school track. You're going to heavy duty training. You're learning all about, mechanisms of action of drugs and how they affect humans and pathology and disease states. And it was great, and it was a wonderful learning experience. And they trained the heck out of us, both on the clinical side, but also the sales side, professional selling. How do you communicate with a physician? How do you follow a sales process? How do you build a territory? How do you manage your time? And, the course of that first 2 or 3 years at Cardinal was all about just really professional training and really how do you become a professional salesperson? And, I really enjoyed it. I embraced it. I wasn't the number one guy in the sales training class. And in my first year, I wasn't the number one sales rep, or probably in the second or third year. But I was always really, competing and really building, my foundation to, to success. And I could feel that I was building momentum, and I was getting recognized. And some of the management were saying, hey, you've got some of the traits we look for in management. And, you do a lot of things with the team. You're willing to help others. You jump in on conference calls, and they started to give me opportunities to get into leadership development. And, before I knew it, probably 4 years into that role, I was a manager, and I'm now building a team. I was managing 12 people in the Southeast of the United States, hiring, firing, performance management, the whole thing. And it was huge. It was a big part of my career trajectory.
Had they not brought that up to you and said, hey, you're showing signs of leadership, would you have thought to do that? Was that something that was kind of in your eye? Because I know I want to talk a little bit about basketball too. And I know you were a leader on the team as a point guard. So was that just something you knew you wanted to do, or was there them tapping you on the shoulder kind of the trigger for that?
Yeah, I think inherently I love leading, and, but it's all about confidence. And I was new in that industry, and I was like, well, I'm young, I'm new. There's people that have been doing this for 10, 15 years. How am I going to manage them? And the reality is you don't have to know all the answers, right? And to be a great leader. And it's about doing things with integrity and, and figuring out how to collaborate and get the best out of others. And, and I learned a lot, to your point, on the fields of both courts of basketball and soccer fields and everywhere else. I played sports, but, leadership came naturally to me, but I didn't know how to translate that into the professional. I was a little intimidated, maybe because of my age or, and then you start developing mentors and you start seeing how people are doing things and why. And then your natural gifts start to come out, and, and luckily people recognize that. And that's what's great about being now a leader is I can see that in younger, less experienced people. I see those traits and start to try and cultivate that quickly and make them aware that, hey, you're doing some really neat things. Are you interested in contributing to others? Are you interested in more than just your individual results? If you are, I'd like to help develop that within you.
Yeah.
And, again, I was very fortunate to have, a few people that recognize that in me, and we're able to take some of that natural gift and really start to cultivate it and draw it out.
Real quick, because you brought up a question, because I get a question a lot from people that are either not yet into leadership but want to go on that track, or they're in leadership, they want to get promoted and move up. What advice would you give? So what are some of those things that you're looking for in somebody that you say, wow, this person's got some really good leadership potential?
Well, I mean, listen, it starts with just your being state. If you want to be a leader, start to act like one. What are things that leaders do that you've seen? If what's your best manager act like? What's the best, leader? What's somebody you really look up to? How do they act? How are they being around others? Are you on time to meetings? Do you contribute? Are you the guy that's always late with, the administrative duties? Or are you the one that's early and does real high quality work? And the little things all add up. That's what I've really learned. It's all those little teeny things that you can make a decision on. Is it going to make or break you? No. But if you do all the little things all the time right, people recognize it, and over time you build habits. Really good habits become a way of being, and that translates to, really good results. You'll get better results, but also I think others recognize you for what you do and the way you go about your day, the way you go about your business, your attention to detail, the quality of work you do, and also the ability to, and the desire to help others. Who's raising their hand when somebody's, man, I really need help with this project, with this customer, with this situation. In my industry, medical device sales, there's a lot of case coverage, meaning you're going in to support a physician in surgery. Well, sometimes your customers have surgery at the same time, 2 different places in your territory or region. Who are the reps that want to go help that other, their colleague out and cover a case? They may have to fly on a plane and miss business in their own region to do it. But who are the guys that step up and want to do that? And those are the people that you start to, they emerge as leaders. And, they're willing to sacrifice their own outcomes and their own, advancement for the sake of others and for the sake of the team. They want good outcomes for the team.
That's such a good point. I mean, I remember I worked with somebody who was exceptional as an advisor, a financial advisor, when I was coming into the business, and exceptional. And so naturally, you thought this person was going to be a great leader, and they turned out not to be, because they didn't have those. They were very good at taking care of themselves and making sure that they really excelled. But when it came to doing those things, that sometimes the little things that make a big difference for other people, that require sacrifice and willingness to not take recognition and put it on somebody else, it just didn't happen. So I think that's a key attribute of leaders.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I've seen so many managers that they want their team to win, they want their subordinates to do well, but they want them to do well so they get recognition, not because they really want them to do well for them. And it boggles my mind. I don't know if that's just something inherent in people or the way they were raised, or I've never figured that out, but it just stifles me, because again, if I've got a team of people, whether I'm managing 2 or 100, I want them to be successful for them, not because it's going to make me look good or make, inevitably it will. It's just by natural, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the true spirit of, I think, authentic leadership is that you do care more about the outcomes of your team than you, right? Individually.
Well, and I think that's super transparent. I mean, people can see that. I mean, I think in general, people are pretty attuned and can pick up signals, and they know, if your followers can tell if you've really got their best interest in heart, or you're just trying to win for your own sake. I mean, you see it. I've been on teams like that where my leader, I truly felt like, had my best interest. I knew there were times when, no, all right, this is all about him or her. And and that's clear. And then the team goes a whole different direction. Yeah. So you've focused a lot on building, developing high performing teams, and you've done that now in a real big way. What are some of the things that you think go into helping you do that and making sure a team is at its highest level of performance?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the longer I go into my career, the more I realize the less I know, and I'm learning and consuming along the way. And I'm very humbled as I listen to even podcasts like yours, and there's so much material out there that you can learn from and just consume information. And it's amazing. We're just in an era where there's just an abundance of such valuable information at your fingertips, whether it's a podcast or something on the internet or through LinkedIn, you name it. There's just so many ways to gather information and gather stuff you can put into action. So, I would say the high performance teams and the foundation that I work off of and kind of my why is, building and being part of high performance teams that impact others in a positive way, that create this kind of ripple effect, if you can visualize that. So we're doing things that really influence and positively impact other people's lives. And I think the starting point for that is trust, building trust with your team, so that, one of the tenets that I really believe in is leading from the front. So as the leader, if I'm going to ask you, John, as a member of my team to do something, I myself should be able to do that, should, step in and help you do that if needed. And not to say that my job is to do all the activities that my team does, and many of them do it much better than me, but I sure as heck should, be willing to give it my best and try. And leading from the front has always served me very well. And the leaders that I've looked up to lead from the front. They're usually the hardest working, first in the office, out of the office, the first ones to respond when there's trouble. So, I think leading from the front, building trust, building confidence, and, transparency. And I think that's something that in the last probably few years has really become clear to me, is that the more transparent, the more vulnerable you are. It's okay if you don't have the answer, if you don't know. As the leader, that's not your job. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to know how to solve every problem, but you do need to know how to collaborate with team members. You need to have transparent discussions and understand that, hey, guys, we got a problem here. We're not getting the results we want. Why do you think that is? Here's what I think. I don't know if that's 100% right, but what do you guys think about it? What do we need to do to change the trajectory to get meet the objectives we want to meet? And, let's hold ourselves accountable. Let's hold ourselves to a standard that really defines what a high performance team is, which is we got to deliver results. It's not all about feeling good and kumbaya. Like, we have to deliver results. The industry that I've been in for the last, 14, 15 years in healthcare is mostly high growth companies that have new technologies that we're trying to bring to the marketplace that are venture backed. You've got to deliver results, and pretty good ones at that. So we have to develop trust quickly. We've got to develop transparency and a culture where we hold ourselves accountable. And then we've got to go out and execute, and when we do that, typically everybody's really happy. We get the results we intended to. And, and people are fulfilled because we're doing great things for other people, not only within our organization, but we're impacting our physicians' lives, our patients' lives, and, and so on and so forth. So the intrinsic value goes beyond the money we make or the quota we just hit, or, you name any of the metrics that are important in, many of the businesses we all find ourselves in. So, yeah, there's many tenets, but, I do believe that, for high performance teams, the foundation is really about trust. It's really about, belief in each other, and then that transparency and vulnerability to kind of trust each other enough to say, hey, we're doing great. We're not doing great, but let's face the brutal truth, and let's make, the changes we need to get the results we want.
Yeah. Transparency, I think, is one of the most important traits for sure in a leader. And, and again, people pick up really quickly the BS factor. They can tell when, somebody's not shooting straight. and they can tell if they're not getting the full story or whatnot. I mean, when you see situations when you're working with other leaders, I know you develop other leaders. Um, how do you teach somebody to be like that? I guess how do you teach transparency? I guess that's a tough question because
Yeah.
I guess most people that are not transparent may not realize they are not transparent and authentic because, I'll give you a quick example. I know of a leader where, to your point, people follow what you do, not even so much what you say. You've got to lead from the front because they're listening to what you say and then they're watching what you do. And if what you're doing is not lining up, real dumb example. I just had my daughter, I told her she left something in the sink and I'm like, Sky, please don't leave pots in the sink. You got to wash it, put it in the, and then sure enough, a little later, I left something in the sink. She's like, well, Dad, what that doesn't, so right away I lose my credibility and I'm like, okay, well, bad me. But how do you teach somebody, the importance of that and transparency and all this stuff if they may not even know they're not?
Well, I think you're nailing it. It's what are the actions you take? I mean, it's all about what you do and the culture you're trying to build, and and having I think, John, at the backdrop of that is a little bit of just it's confidence. Are you confident, and do you have the integrity? Are you taking action with integrity? Because if you do that, transparency becomes easier because you're not hiding anything. What do you have to hide? It's about teaching that. Teaching that I think is really challenging to articulate. I mean, but I think it's the way you approach, the interactions you have as a team, the one-on-one, interactions I found are really important. With team members that I have worked with over the years, the managers where I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time together and we dedicated one-on-one time together, that type of conversation, which is kind of an intimate conversation, can occur. The group setting is a little more challenging. That's where the leader just has to show it, right? You got to go clean the pots and the pans in front of everybody and not leave them in there to get that message across. In the one-on-one coaching, the field rides, the calls, that's where I think you can have some of those more intimate, challenging conversations. Like, hey, man, I was on your conference call the other day, and I didn't come across real authentic. I felt like the team was picking up on, you really want to hit the number this month, and you want them to do these things, but it really wasn't in the best interest of them, or whatever that situation may be. But it doesn't put them on the spot in front of their peers. It's something where you can have this conversation and again, build trust.
Yeah.
Right. It's a building block, and that interaction where, hey, did you feel that way? Or how'd you feel after that call? Did you get any feedback from your team on how you were leading?
Yeah.
Did they react, and
Yeah.
posing those questions,
Yeah.
right? And exploring that with them and see if you get that type of interaction. It can be a little awkward, it can be a challenging conversation to have.
And that's such a great point. I think leaders miss opportunities to develop people. Everything is a leadership moment. So, you see there's so many leaders that might see that, observe that and feel that way. Hey, so-and-so's not really being transparent, but they don't give them the feedback or they don't give it specifically enough. Because if you just tell somebody, hey, I'm feeling like you're not as authentic, and that's a really broad-based and maybe hard to hear piece of feedback. But if you couple it with, hey, when you're on this call, here's what you did, or here's where your body language was saying, and I don't know if you realized it, but you weren't even really pointing toward anybody. You were looking away, and that's where somebody is like, oh, okay, got it. I didn't realize I was doing that.
The tough conversation, the awkward conversation to have. And I'll give you an anecdote. I was developing a new sales rep. I was a manager in a medical device company at the time, and I was managing California, Oregon, and Washington. And I had just put in an expansion region in Southern California, really competitive space. It was kind of the San Diego to Orange County, market. Hired a rep that didn't have the medical device background that we really looked for, really took a risk. This was somebody that she just really impressed me in the interview. She had non-relevant experience to the profile. So right off the bat, my manager and the greater team said, wow, are you sure you want to hire her? And and the story goes that she comes out of the gate. She's got this tremendous personality. I could tell she was super talented. She just needed honed in. She needed to develop a little bit of emotional intelligence. There's a lot of things around the edges that needed to be buffed and shined, but man, she was super talented. So as it goes, she didn't sell anything the first year on the job. That's not good. And again, in the medical device space we were selling a technology that you needed to move a lot of. It was a high transactions. We were selling these devices they would use in orthopedic surgery to stop bleeding. So it was a hemostatic device. Anyway, long story short, she didn't sell anything for a year. And so my manager basically every quarter is going, "Hey, Jeremy, do you realize that she's not selling, and what are you doing about it?" Well, I'm coaching her. I'm doing everything you and I are talking about. I'm having the hard conversations, and she's listening, and she's adjusting, and she's maturing, and she's applying what we're trying to do. And all the were right. And now we're basically 5 quarters into her career with us, and my number's suffering because I'm not delivering the results I need. And but I'm being transparent. I'm being authentic to both sides. I'm coaching the rep. I'm talking to my manager and their manager about it. I'm like, listen, I really believe in this person. She is doing the right things. It's going to happen for her. And I mean, we were at the precipice of like, hey man, basically your job's on the line if you let this go any longer.
Wow.
And sure enough, John, she popped, and it was just like, you could see it. It wasn't like overnight, but got a customer, next hospital, next customer. And within the next, call it year, she's one of the top reps in the country, and then went on to just have this incredibly powerful career at this company. And then even furthermore, we've stayed in touch. She's a dear friend of mine, and has just doing amazing things in her career that, but I saw it really early, and I didn't give up on her. And, if I wasn't transparent, and if I didn't give her the kind of direct feedback she needed, she probably would have failed, and I would have failed, and it would have been a catastrophe for both of us.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
awesome.
I love that story. And obviously she has, and everybody's got a leader in their life that has made an unbelievable difference. And I'm sure that you are that to her. It brings up another question. I get this from leaders all the time. How do you know when you should keep going with somebody, or when it is time to pull the plug? I mean, it is, to your point, that's, you get high enough in a company, and your butt's on the line if you're making a bad decision or keeping somebody longer than they need to. How do you know that?
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a science in and of itself. And there's a story behind the numbers. I say that a lot I think it applies to most business, especially in the sales side, or really probably any division you're within. Within it, it's about what are the activities that are going on. What is that person doing? What are they accountable to? Are they progressing? Are they flat? Are they moving backwards? And if you can assess that through really a good leader instills performance management metrics and techniques. And again, depending on the industry you're in, but there's certain things you should be tracking against. But if you just clear the slate, it's like, is this person doing the right things day to day? And if you say yes to that, then it's like, okay, why aren't we getting the intended results? Well, let's look. And again, based on the nuances of the thing they're trying to accomplish, it's like, well, in this instance, I see this rep makes tons of sales calls. They're super productive, but they don't get a lot of closes. Why aren't they getting closes? Well, let's go listen. What's happening during the sales call? They build relationships really well, but they never ask for the business. Well, let's coach them how to ask for the business. Now they start closing. They start making some wins. They build up that piece of the acumen that was missing. Now they're getting some results. Or maybe you coach them and they don't do it. They're not good at it. They're not that talented. It doesn't suit them. Maybe they should find a different seat on the bus. Maybe they're better suited for operations. Maybe they're analytical. Maybe they're, you name it. But it's like, just because they're not doing well at this one role doesn't mean you can't find them a spot on the bus that really suits them and potentially can really help their team. And I think many leaders have stories of finding people within their organizations that aren't necessarily sitting in that right spot. Mm-hmm. And when you get them in the right spot, it's like, oh my gosh, they just take off, and you see it, and they're so much happier. So I don't even know if I've answered your questions. I don't know when the right time to cut somebody off is, but I know that if you've put in the work, you've done the assessment, you're coaching, you're performance managing, and you're not seeing the trajectory change, it's time to make a change.
Yeah. You
And
bring up such a good point, though. It's not a leaders think about it's either it's keep going or pull the plug. But to your point, a lot of times, and I think about that too, how many people I know that are really successful that started as one role and moved into a different role. And it was just they were in the wrong role. Great, great potential impactor and influencer and game changer potentially that just had to find the right seat, you know? So great point. I know we're running short on time here, so I want to be respectful. You've got a book coming out, I know, which was really interesting, kind of playing into your experience as a point guard. Tell us a little bit about what you got coming.
yeah, so it's called the point guard approach. And it was kind of a culmination of a lot of, a lot of years of doing basketball and a lot of years of being in the professional world. And I'm sitting on airplanes. This is 5 years ago. And I'm flying everywhere, John. I'm spending, 150,000 miles a year domestically, just traveling the United States, working with my team, doing what I love, but I'm spending a lot of time on the road away from my family. And, while you're on the airplane, you're in the hotel, you're on the train, whatever it is, there's a lot of downtime. And I'm thinking, hey, I can do something better than watching every episode of this Netflix documentary or this series or whatever it is. And, I had been contemplating a number of ideas around this correlation between what I had learned on the basketball court as, not only a point guard, but just playing basketball and what I do on a day-to-day basis as a leader, concepts like vision, assists, leading from the front, resilience, flexibility, fundamentals, finishing. These are all things that in basketball are really, really important. Well, guess what? They're really important to what I do. And, so I just started kind of taking some notes down. I had met a physician during a dinner that we were doing, an educational dinner, that told me about writing a book that, he had done. Really got me thinking about, wow, he did that. He's a full-time orthopedic surgeon. I can figure out a way to do this too. And, kind of start by starting, right? So you just, you build a template, get some ideas on paper, and the next thing you know, every time I'm traveling, I'm writing. And before I knew it, I had, 23,000 words, organized in a little bit of a framework, sent it out to some friends, some colleagues, people I trusted, got some feedback, not all good, not all bad, said, all right, I got something here. And over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, really worked hard to put together, I think a story that can help other people. And that's really what it's about is, these principles and these tenets that I've applied in my career, and I've seen other really successful people that I look up to, have really apply a lot of these ideas and concepts to the way they go about their life and their business. And the concept here is to share that. So it's about the approach. What's your approach to what you're trying to accomplish? And, I'm really excited. I'm hopefully in the next 6-9 months, we'll have a book ready and on the market. But yeah, I'm with a publisher and we're in the process.
That's exciting, man. I can't wait to read it. That's got just based on our conversation, I know you got a lot of wisdom to share and a lot of learnings that you can pass on to other people. So if people do want to either get on your mailing list or some kind of list so that they get notified of that, is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah, so we built a landing page for the book. It's called thepointguardapproach.com, all one word. Listen, you can email me, jlaynor@gmail.com. But on the website, there's a subscribe. You can put your email in there, and we'll definitely inform everybody of the progress, and then when the book's ready for pre-order and beyond. So really, really excited to share some of those ideas and concepts.
Awesome, man. And hopefully it'll be book one of many of a series.
Yeah, man, God willing. God willing. Thank you.
Well, good for you. This has been fantastic. I've loved talking with you and so many good takeaways. And I know we have to always try and crunch in as much as we can in a short period of time. But anything else that you want to share? You got a lot of people out there that are listening that obviously are going to be intrigued by your story, what you've done, what you've accomplished, and wanting to do similar or move up the ladder or whatnot. Any last bits of advice you give them?
My mom always said hard work pays off. It's an old adage, but I truly believe that. And I think if you're really passionate about something, don't let anybody get in your way. just go after it wholeheartedly. Have the discipline to do it, right? You'll build the acumen along the way, and be flexible and resilient. And whatever you want to do, in your career and your personal life, I think you can accomplish it with that kind of backdrop, because at the end of the day, it comes down to helping others, contributing. And, if you have the hard work and the discipline to do it, nothing's going to get in your way. You're going to make it happen. So, with that, John, I really appreciate it. I love all the interviews you've been doing. I get a lot out of the podcast, and I'm really fortunate to be a part of yours. So thanks a lot. And I hope, somebody takes even 1% out of this conversation. That would mean a lot to me. So
well,
thanks.
I'm sure they will. And that's, we were talking about that, take something and run with it. If they can take a few ideas, and I know you shared a ton, and it's all about taking one idea that they learned from you and implementing it, doing something with it, and then look forward to having your book come out and hearing more stuff. So awesome. Well, Jeremy, thank you for joining us, and we'll have you back another time down the road for sure. So
thank you so much, John. Have a good one.
You got it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. This has been today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader with Jeremy Laynor. Fascinating story. And please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. And as a reminder, on September 22nd, join me 5 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a live leadership mastermind. It will be one that you do not want to miss. Make sure you message me directly. I'll get you the info on that. Thanks again for joining, everybody. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.